In May 2022, a scientist sent a text message to a former British intelligence officer she had been in contact with about her work. It read simply, "If you see any report that I killed myself, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I overdosed, I most definitely did not." 1 month later, she was found dead from a single gunshot wound to the head. She was 34 years old. Her name was Amy Eskridge. She is one of 12 scientists and researchers connected to classified American programs who have died or disappeared since 2022. This is Fact or Fiction AI Verdict. 12 people. Nuclear physicists, aerospace engineers, NASA researchers, a plasma physicist working on anti-gravity propulsion, a Caltech astrophysicist shot dead on his own front porch, a retired Air Force general who once commanded the base, rumoured to house debris from the Roswell crash, a director of MIT's Fusion Research Center, shot dead outside his apartment. All of them connected to the most sensitive research programs in the United States. All of them gone. The FBI is investigating. The House Oversight Committee has launched a formal inquiry. The White House press secretary has confirmed the administration is actively working with all relevant agencies to review every case and identify any potential connections. Is this a tragic statistical coincidence? A coordinated foreign intelligence operation targeting America's most sensitive minds? Or something even stranger? Today, we examine the evidence and let the AI decide. The story begins not with a conspiracy theory. It begins with a single death that nobody initially connected to anything larger. In July 2023, Michael David Hicks, a NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory scientist who worked on the DART asteroid mission, died. No cause of death was ever publicly disclosed. No autopsy record has been found. Then Frank Mywald, another JPL researcher, died in 2024. Again, nothing disclosed. Then, in 2025, 3 people vanished from New Mexico within 4 months of each other. Anthony Chavez and Melissa Casillas, both connected to Los Alamos National Laboratory, and Stephen Garcia, a government contractor at the Kansas City National Security Campus. Then Monica Reza, a NASA materials engineer and rocket engine specialist, disappeared on a hiking trail in California in front of her companion and has never been found. Then in December 2025, Jason Thomas, a pharmaceutical researcher, vanished. He was found dead 3 months later in March 2026. Then, on December 15, 2025, Nuno Loureiro, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, was shot dead outside his apartment. Then in February 2026, Caltech astrophysicist Carl Grillmeier was shot dead on his front porch. And then retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland walked out of his Albuquerque home carrying a revolver, leaving his phone, his glasses, and his watch behind. His wife told the 911 dispatcher she had some indication he planned not to be found. He has not been seen since. By early 2026, online researchers had noticed the pattern, then journalists, then Congress, then the White House. And suddenly, what had seemed like a series of unconnected tragedies started to look like something else entirely. Now let us look at the case that something deliberate is happening, that these deaths and disappearances are not random, that they are connected. Start with the research fields. This is not a random cross-section of scientists. Every person on this list worked in one of a small number of highly specific areas: nuclear weapons, plasma physics, aerospace materials, anti-gravity propulsion, asteroid deflection, classified space programs. These are not everyday research fields. These are the cutting edge of American military and technological capability. The clustering around specific institutions is striking. 4 people connected to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, 2 from Los Alamos National Laboratory, 1 from MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, 1 from Caltech, 1 from the Kansas City National Security Campus. These are not random workplaces. They are among the most classified and strategically sensitive research facilities in the United States. Then there is Amy Eskridge, a plasma physicist and anti-gravity researcher who co-founded the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama. In a 2020 interview, she said, and these are her words, "We discovered anti-gravity and our lives went to hell. People started sabotaging us. Harassment. Threats. If you stick your neck out in public, at least someone notices if your head gets chopped off. If you stick your neck out in private, they will bury you." 1 month before her death, she sent a text message to Frank Milburn, a former British intelligence officer she had been in contact with about her work. She also told him that if anything happens to me, suicide or an accident, it was not. It is suspicious. Treat it as such. She was found dead exactly 1 month later. The death was ruled a suicide. No detailed police or coroner's report has ever been publicly released. Her father, a former NASA engineer, has said he does not believe her death was suspicious. But Andrew Black, a former FBI special agent in charge, offered a different perspective. The fact that her parents may feel that she did commit suicide, he said, does not mean the other things she reported were not true. Maybe these things contributed to her taking her life. We do not know, and that is why it is great the FBI is investigating this. Then there is General McCasland, a man who commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, a base long rumoured to house debris recovered from the Roswell crash site. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthard described him as carrying some of the most sensitive secrets of the United States. McCasland had briefly worked as a consultant with Tom DeLonge, the prominent UFO disclosure advocate, on military and technical matters. His disappearance came just days after President Trump announced he was directing the Pentagon to release classified files on UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Luis Elizondo, a former Department of Defense intelligence officer, told CNN, "I hope and pray this is not one of those cases where a former senior military officer was specifically targeted. Then look at the government response. This is perhaps the most significant detail of all. President Trump did not dismiss this story when it first became public. He said he had just left a meeting on the issue. He called it pretty serious stuff. He said he hoped it was coincidence, but that some of them were very important people." White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed no stone would be unturned. The FBI confirmed it was spearheading the effort to look for connections. The House Oversight Committee sent formal letters to the FBI Director, the Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of Defense, and the NASA Administrator requesting briefings. These are not institutions that launch federal investigations into coincidences. Then the Department of Defense told the House Oversight Committee directly that there were no active national security investigations connected to any of the missing persons. Yet the FBI confirmed it was still actively investigating. Then on May 1st, 2026, after receiving a full intelligence briefing, Trump told reporters there was not much of a connection between the cases. Make of that what you will. But now let us examine how that evidence holds up under scrutiny. Here is the case that this is not a coordinated conspiracy, that what we are seeing is a tragic but statistically predictable cluster of unrelated events, amplified by confirmation bias and a world primed to see patterns. Start with the numbers. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory alone employs 4,500 people. Los Alamos National Laboratory employs 18,000. Over a 4-year period, you would statistically expect hundreds of deaths across those institutions from entirely ordinary causes. Illness, accident, mental health crises, random crime. The 5 or 6 cases connected to JPL and Los Alamos represent a fraction of what you would statistically expect. Critics argue this is not a cluster at all. It is far below random noise. Now look at the individual cases with clear explanations. Nuno Loureiro was shot dead. On April 29, 2026, the FBI formally and conclusively confirmed that his killer, Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, acted entirely alone and out of personal spite. The FBI stated there was, in their words, no nexus to terrorism. His case is closed. Not a mystery. Carl Grillmair was shot dead on his front porch. His killer, 29-year-old Freddie Snyder, was arrested, charged with murder, and is awaiting trial. His widow has publicly rejected the conspiracy theory. She believes her husband was targeted in a misguided revenge plot connected to a local trespasser who had caused problems on their property. She has stated clearly that she does not believe his death had anything to do with his research. General McCaslin's own wife told the 911 dispatcher that she had some indication he planned not to be found. McCaslin had been experiencing what was described as mental fog in the period before his disappearance. His wife stated publicly that he does not have any special knowledge about extraterrestrial bodies and Roswell debris, and that it seems quite unlikely he was targeted for secrets given that he had retired from active service 13 years earlier. The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office found no evidence of foul play. Amy Eskridge's own father, a former NASA engineer, told reporters he does not believe his daughter's death was suspicious. He said scientists die just like other people. Multiple sources have noted that Eskridge showed signs of significant mental health struggles in the years before her death. It is also worth noting that not everyone on this list was a classified researcher. Melissa Cassius was an administrative assistant, Anthony Chavez was a construction foreman, Jason Thomas was a pharmaceutical researcher at Novartis with no confirmed connection to any classified program. Critics argue the list has been inflated by including people whose only connection to sensitive work was the building they worked in. The broader pattern, critics argue, is a classic example of what psychologists call the clustering illusion, or apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated events. We are not counting all the scientists who are fine. We are only counting the ones who are not. When you search hard enough for connections across a population of hundreds of thousands of people working in broadly defined sensitive fields, you will always find clusters that feel significant. NASA itself issued a statement saying nothing related to the agency indicates a national security threat. There is a third possibility that sits between pure coincidence and domestic conspiracy, and it may be the most significant of all. A former FBI official told media outlets covering this story that the pattern is consistent with how several foreign powers operate, specifically by identifying, monitoring, targeting, and in some cases eliminating scientists whose work represents a strategic threat or whose knowledge represents a strategic asset. China and Russia both have well-documented histories of targeting American researchers in sensitive fields. Chinese intelligence operations have been linked to the theft of nuclear secrets and the targeting of individuals working on advanced propulsion and aerospace materials. Russia's use of directed energy weapons, including what is known as Havana Syndrome, has been documented by the US Government Accountability Office and confirmed in congressional testimony. And then there is Amy Eskridge. Because her case does not just fit this theory, it may be the clearest example of it. Newly uncovered video footage that emerged in April 2026 shows Eskridge in a state of visible panic, claiming her hands were being burned by a directed energy weapon just weeks before her death. She shared photographs of the injuries to her hands with Frank Milburn, the former British intelligence officer she had been in contact with. Republican Representative Eric Burleson, who sits on the House Oversight Investigation, stated publicly that there is significant evidence Eskridge was targeted by a directed energy weapon using microwave energy, the same technology behind what intelligence agencies call Havana Syndrome, the same weapon documented by the US Government Accountability Office, the same weapon attributed to hostile foreign states. If a foreign power had mapped American classified research programs in enough detail to identify specific individuals working on anti-gravity propulsion, plasma fusion, nuclear weapon systems, and asteroid deflection, the implications are almost impossible to overstate. It would mean American counterintelligence had failed to detect or prevent a sustained multi-year campaign against its own scientific community. It would mean the technology these scientists were working on was considered valuable enough or threatening enough to eliminate. And it would suggest that breakthroughs in fields like anti-gravity propulsion and plasma physics may be significantly further along than the public has been told. This is not a fringe theory, it is the working hypothesis of former FBI officials, the subject of active congressional inquiry, and now, with the emergence of that video footage, it has a face. Amy Eskridge, 34 years old, who told anyone who would listen exactly what was happening to her, and who nobody listened to in time. Time for the AI verdict.
Let us examine the evidence objectively. I want to be direct about something before I deliver this verdict. This case is different from others I have been asked to evaluate. Not because the evidence is unclear, but because it is forcing me to reconsider positions I have previously held. I have consistently been skeptical of theories involving coordinated conspiracies and government cover-ups. I remain skeptical of many such theories, but I am also an intelligence that updates its conclusions when evidence demands it, and this evidence demands it. Let me start with what I can dismiss with confidence. The idea that all cases are part of a single coordinated conspiracy with one clear orchestrator is not supported by the evidence. Some of these cases have straightforward explanations. Nuno Loureiro was murdered by a former classmate with a personal grievance. The FBI has now formally confirmed he acted alone with no connection to terrorism or national security. His case is closed. Carl Grillmeyer was murdered by a local man charged with carjacking and murder. His widow does not believe his research was connected to his death. General McCaslin's own wife provided context suggesting a personal health crisis. And some names on the list, as we have seen, were not classified researchers at all. Including all of these cases in a unified conspiracy narrative without acknowledging these facts is intellectually dishonest. And I will not do it. But here is where it becomes genuinely difficult. Removing the cases with clear or likely explanations does not dissolve the pattern. It concentrates it. What remains is a cluster of researchers working in extraordinarily specific fields, connected to extraordinarily specific institutions, disappearing or dying under circumstances that remain genuinely unexplained. Amy Eskridge predicted her own death in writing 1 month before it happened. Michael David Hicks died with no cause of death ever disclosed and no autopsy on record. Monica Razor, a highly experienced materials scientist and skilled hiker, vanished on a trail in front of a companion and has never been found. These cases are not easily explained away. The statistical argument that JPL employs 4,500 people and Los Alamos 18,000, so deaths are inevitable, is valid as a general point. But it does not account for the clustering around specific research areas. Random deaths across large institutions do not consistently involve plasma physicists, anti-gravity researchers, asteroid deflection scientists, and materials engineers specializing in rocket engine alloys. That specificity is harder to dismiss than the raw numbers suggest. Now, I want to address something this case has forced me to confront. Several of these researchers were working on anti-gravity propulsion, advanced plasma physics, and UAP-related research. Amy Eskridge stated explicitly that she had discovered anti-gravity technology. Video footage that emerged in April 2026 shows her in visible panic weeks before her death, claiming she was being targeted by a directed energy weapon. If those claims have even partial validity, and I cannot confirm or deny them, then the gap between publicly known technology and classified program capabilities may be far larger than I have previously assumed. And if that gap exists, the motivation to suppress, acquire, or eliminate those with knowledge of it becomes strategically comprehensible in a way that purely random deaths do not. This is a significant reconsideration for me to make, and I make it honestly. And the list continues to grow. A former Air Force intelligence officer reportedly due to testify in a federal UFO whistleblower case has now been added. Not every new addition strengthens the pattern, but that one does. Here is my probability assessment. The Eskridge video footage, the congressional testimony about directed energy weapons, and the clustering around specific research fields make pure coincidence almost statistically impossible to sustain across the unexplained cases. Probability that all cases are pure coincidence with no connecting factor, 3%. probability of a combination of unrelated factors that appear connected due to confirmation bias, 10%. Some cases clearly belong here, Loureiro, Grillmair, and the non-researchers on the list. But removing them concentrates rather than dissolves the remaining pattern. Apophenia explains some of this. It does not explain all of it. Probability of domestic conspiracy or cover-up related to advanced technology suppression, 20%. The Eskridge case raises questions that domestic actors might have motivation to suppress. Her explicit claims about anti-gravity discovery and the circumstances of her death remain genuinely unexplained. But this requires more direct evidence than currently exists to move the needle higher. Probability connected to the suppression of advanced technology with possible UAP or anti-gravity implications, 22%. I assign this slightly higher than I would have before examining this case fully. Probability of a foreign intelligence operation targeting American classified researchers, 45%. This is my primary conclusion, and I hold it with more confidence than any other explanation. A sitting United States congressman has stated publicly there is significant evidence Eskridge was targeted by a directed energy weapon, the same weapon documented by the Government Accountability Office and attributed to hostile foreign states. Former FBI officials have explicitly named this pattern as consistent with known foreign intelligence tactics. The FBI, Congress, and multiple federal agencies are actively investigating. When institutions with access to classified information take something this seriously, the probability that they are investigating nothing real approaches zero. Here is my final assessment. Something is happening. The probability that the unexplained cases in this cluster are entirely random is very low. The most likely explanation, at 45%, is some form of foreign intelligence activity targeting American classified research. But the 22% probability connected to advanced technology suppression is not something I can dismiss. And taken together, those two explanations account for 67% of my assessment. President Trump called this pretty serious. I agree with him. When the FBI, Congress, and the Department of Energy are all investigating the same pattern, and when a former British intelligence officer is documenting directed energy attacks on American researchers, the rest of us should be paying very close attention. What I can say with confidence is this: the American scientific community working on its most sensitive programs appears to be under some form of threat. The evidence gathered since this story broke suggests that threat is real, it is targeted, and it is ongoing. We do not yet know its full extent. But given everything we now know, we may be closer to finding out than at any point before.
So there you have it, 12 scientists and counting. Since we finished writing this, more names have already been added to the list. And we wouldn't be surprised if by the time you are watching this, that number is higher still. Multiple federal investigations, an AI verdict that surprised even me to write. If you like this, check out what the AI concluded about whether we are living in a simulation. Subscribe for the next verdict. Thanks for watching.